On. I don't know, am I on? Good. How many of you would you consider yourself patient people? You know, when someone's supposed to do something and they don't do it immediately? Maybe we should ask your friends and your family, are you patient? Do they see that? I would consider myself normally a fairly patient person. Some of you may disagree, and you can be wrong, that's fine. Everyone's welcome here. I think in most things I'm pretty patient. A lot of things that boil other people's, boil their blood under the skin don't really get me too concerned. But I did find a list. I found a quiz on BuzzFeed, of all places. But I found it on BuzzFeed that was about the questions were all about how patient are you? And as I'm going through this, I'm thinking, man, I'm doing a pretty good job. Then I got to laughing because I'm doing this for, research. And so I skim through it, and I wonder their conclusion. And at the bottom, the question was, if you skim through this because it was too long, you're probably not patient. I'm like, well, snap. But before that, one caught me off guard. I was doing really good, and then, these things don't annoy me. I'm doing fine. And then one said, does it annoy you when people in front of you walk slowly? Oh, man. That one just about did me in. Because all those feelings, I was fine. I was fine with all these others, but all of a sudden I got stuck in those situations where I'm in a crowded mall and everyone is doing the slow pace. And as a guy, you don't want to hang around malls that long. You don't want people thinking of weird things of you. And so my brother and I developed what we call the mall walk. And since we were long-legged, we could we just kind of put our hands in our pocket and we'd take a 6-foot pace step, and we just boom, store to store, no problem. And when people got in front of us that weren't going that pace, which was pretty much everybody, because no one had that pace, it would annoy the tar out of us. Now I have, a wife and kids that hold my hand and keep me reminded to stay back with them. But there are things that annoy us, right? The things that we lose our patience, and it may be something simple like that, or maybe something quite significant. In 2006, the Associated Press did a survey about the impatience in the United States of America. And I was fascinated with this for several reasons. It says, while waiting in line at an office or a store, it takes an average of 17 minutes for most people to lose their patience. Okay? On the phone, it takes about 9 minutes. Women lost their patience at about 18 minutes. Men, it was 15. We're less patient, apparently. Here's the thing that I took from that survey. That is gracious. That is generous. In my own evaluation of people, it doesn't take more than about 30 seconds to 1 minute for people to get impatient. Have you seen that? Don't believe me? Go to Kroger. Go to Brahms on a Sunday. God bless those workers. They are working their tail off. But there's just not enough of them. And they are working so hard, and you see the line build, and you see the frustration build as well. All because this fast food isn't coming fast enough for them. And we are just an impatient culture. We deal with this so often. I think we are an impatient culture because we are a self-centered culture. Every one of us has our plan that we think things should go according to. But when the plan doesn't go according to my plan, we get frustrated. Because everything should work the way that I want it to work, right? And that would be fine if I were the only one living. But I'm not. And we all have our own wills, and sometimes we have a will that is outside of any of our own that is pushing and dictating and narrating some of our life to us. We are accustomed to all the conveniences of our culture that we get upset when we are simply inconvenienced. So that's what we're going to be talking about this morning. We are continuing our series called Meeting Jesus at the Cross, where we're looking at different people who met Jesus at the time of the cross. Whenever Jesus was going on the cross, we're going to look at those people. And today we're going to look at a man that was severely inconvenienced. So to set the stage, let's back up what we saw last week. We saw Jesus before Pilate. He's before Pilate. He's on trial for crimes he did not commit, yet he is still sentenced to death. Jesus takes Barabbas' place, takes Barabbas' cross, and he's to be crucified. And Pilate sends him on that journey. We'll pick up the story in Matthew 27. It says, then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him. Then they twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand, then knelt in front of him and mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They spit on him. They took the staff and they struck him on the head again and again. After they had mocked him and they took off the robe and they put his own clothes on him, and then they led him away to be crucified. Many historians believe that this was an unusually severe beating here. Partly how the story goes, but also how it's described. Crucifixions are gory. It's a gory business and a horrible way to die. No way around that. If all they did was hang the person on the cross to slowly die from that means, it would take weeks for that person to die. They would more so die of starvation and weakness from that rather than anything else. And Rome wasn't above making sure someone was in agony for that long, but it also wasn't efficient. And Rome was about efficiency. And so what they would do beforehand is they would beat the person to weaken them, to get them to a weakened state so that by the time they put them on the cross, it would only last days rather than weeks for them to die. Well, the way the story goes with Jesus, he doesn't last the day. And so a lot of scholars back up and say it is quite possibly for his physical body. Obviously, he died, he willed it. This was all part of God's plan, but for the physical body of him, that this beating seems to be especially severe. The crown of thorns, that's a new one. They did that in the moment. They did that for what was happening there. We don't fully know why they beat him more severely. It could be because of the title that they throw around mocking it, "Hail, King of the Jews." And there's a special place in the Roman's heart for the authority that they follow. And no one messes with the authority. In fact, they are sent into war to anyone who might challenge the authority of Caesar. Anyone who might say they're king. And so that may be the case. It may be that the Sanhedrin and the Jews that are surrounding and calling for his crucifixion are egging them on more and more, which may not be a normal occurrence for these Romans, and so they kind of get into it. We don't know fully what's going on. What we do know is this beating was severe, and they leave Jesus after this beating bloody and weak. So John says this, John 19, verse 16. Finally, Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified. So the soldiers took charge of Jesus. Carrying his own cross, he went out to the place of the skull, which is in Aramaic is called Golgotha. Now, this is a detail that we might overlook sometimes. Now, we don't because we see a lot of the pictures of Jesus, someone carrying their cross, and we use them as backgrounds for different things. And, they help illustrate some things. But what's happening here is quite often they would carry the crossbeam themselves. Sometimes they would already be tied to it as they're traveling through the city. Traveling through the city, this is not a modern-day city. It's not even close to what some of the side streets in south of downtown might look like. Have you ever noticed those? Like they are one-way streets for, you can't fit two cars there. We might consider that a small street now. Streets of Jerusalem most of them would have been much smaller. And this is crowded this time of year. This is Passover. Everybody's in town. So they are starting there at really kind of city center. and they have to travel outside of the city. And they're carrying this crossbeam. If they're already tied to it, as some cases are, it may not have been so much with Jesus. We don't know those details. But they're trying to navigate their way through a crowd carrying this crossbeam. And that's got to be difficult. While the crowd is quite possibly mocking them, jeering at them. This is the days before, television and Netflix. I know there were days before that. You may not know that. But this was a form of entertainment for people. We know that because the Roman Colosseum was an entertainment. This is the same kind of idea that happens later, obviously. But what breeds that is that you watch men going to their death through the streets. You don't see that every day. So yeah, everyone comes out to watch. The streets are crowded. The Roman soldiers are having to kind of pave a way for those who are condemned to make it through. And all the while, the crowds are mocking. They're spitting upon the scorned. So Jesus is there carrying his cross through the streets, and the inevitable happens. He falls. I don't know if it was a stumble. I don't know if it was an intentional, because God, he's God and he knows what the plan is. But he can't get up. Someone needs to help him. But imagine the scene. He is surrounded by hundreds, if not thousands, of people. And no one offers to help. I like to picture myself in certain scenarios throughout Scripture. I don't like to picture myself in this one, because I'm pretty sure I would be one of the crowd. I would like to think higher of myself than that, but I'm pretty sure that I would fall into that crowd and be like, dude, someone should go help the guy. As that old song from AVB goes, everybody said that anybody could do all the good things somebody should do. But when everybody says that anybody could do, that nobody did, that no one does that. I missed that last little line, Diana. She'll tell me what it is afterwards, I'm sure. The whole point is, whenever we think someone should do it, we often don't consider ourselves someone. Where are the disciples? Surely the disciples would have been there, right? Nope, they all fled. Anyone. The soldiers aren't going to lift a finger to help. That's not their job. And none of the crowd is, apparently. And so what happens is we are introduced to a guy named Simon. Mark 15, verse 21, a certain man from Cyrene, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus, was passing by on the way in from the country. And they forced him to carry the cross. Now, Matthew, Mark, and Luke all tell us this event. They record this event for us. They tell us a guy from Cyrene named Simon carried the cross of Jesus. And that's about all they say. But we can extrapolate a few things from this short little meeting that this man named Simon had with Jesus. First of all is this. Cyrene is a large city in what is now modern-day Libya. Libya is northern Africa on the Mediterranean coast, okay? And it's a large city, but it also is a city that has a large Jewish population. So it wasn't a surprise that a guy from Cyrene shows up on Passover. The Jews considered that they wanted to make at least one pilgrimage for Passover especially, but to Jerusalem in their lifetime. If they were far away, that was their hope and their goal, is to make it to the holy city, make it to the temple to worship in one of these great festivals and one of these great feast days that in their lifetime. Well, Cyrene is probably, it is approximately 800 miles from Jerusalem by land. Traveling in that day, you didn't just jump in a car or hop on an airplane and make that pretty easy. You either traveled by foot, you traveled by a land animal, or you traveled by boat. So if you were traveling by foot to go approximately 800 miles, it would take you about 57 days to travel that on foot. If you were lucky enough to be on a camel or a horse, you could probably do it in about 35 days. If you had enough money to go overseas, which is a more direct route, it would be about 700 miles, it would still take you 6 days of sailing and at least 2 days of land travel to make it from Cyrene to Jerusalem. We don't know how long it took Simon. We don't know his mode of travel. We just know he was from Cyrene and he was in Jerusalem, coming in from the country that day. Maybe he was late. Where a lot of pilgrimages, they might show up early. Maybe he was running a little bit late. Maybe those two kids are asking the whole way, are we there yet? And he is just saying, not quite, only 33 more days. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? This may have been a once-in-a-lifetime journey for him. A fulfillment of a dream of significant spiritual impact. I mean, can you imagine? Your whole life you have worshipped and you have participated in the Passover, but this year you're going to do it in the holy city with all the pilgrims that are coming. This is going to be the special year. This is amazing. And yet the anticipation and all the things are building up for that. Now we know that he is coming in from the country as Jesus is heading out to the country. In other words, they're going opposite directions. We don't know if Simon has ever heard of Jesus before. Cyrene is a faraway place. But even if he had, he probably didn't recognize him because the guy was beat to a pulp. There's a good chance Simon didn't even know what was going on. But he sees this man fallen under the cross. Now, a Roman soldier, we know in this time, could conscript any one of the citizens of a country to service, to carry their load for up to a mile. This was actually also part of the deal. They could carry someone's load that was under their care for up to a mile. Now, we don't know why the soldiers picked out Simon. Maybe he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe he was a pretty big guy, and they thought, well, it's not going to inconvenience him too much. Pick up this cross. You've got this. This will be easy. Or maybe there was something absolutely offensive about his appearance to the Romans. I don't know. But what we do know is the soldiers made a convenient choice and just pointed at him and said, you carry his cross. There's no getting out of that. There's no doctor's note to be able to say, I got a bad back. Can't do that. No. Penalty of death. Go pick up his cross. But see, what was convenient for the soldiers was extremely inconvenient for Simon. I mean, this is an obvious point, right? This was not part of Simon's plan. Like whenever he's planning his itinerary with his kids, I'm sure he doesn't come to the point of saying, okay, so when we enter Jerusalem, then Daddy's going to have a little bit of moment where he's going to need to take someone's cross out to be crucified. That wasn't part of the plan. And when things don't go according to plan, it is extremely inconvenient. Simon had probably spent 1 to 2 months making his way to Jerusalem. And as soon as he's entering the holy city, he is making this pilgrimage. He is singing the Psalms of Ascent as he comes. He is praising God as he comes. And whenever he enters the city, he's ready for this wonderful, worshipful experience. And what he is met with is a parade of death. And then he gets invited to be a part of this parade. He's forced to carry the cross through the streets and out the city gate, all to help a disgusting and bloody man who has been beaten so severely he may not have even been recognizable. But not only is this not part of his plan, this is an emotionally draining task. Think about this scene. Simon is following Jesus. That means he has a front row seat to all the mocking, to everyone spitting upon this man, all the scorn, all the hatred. He would be feeling the mood of the crowd firsthand. And he'd be watching Jesus handle it. But no doubt, because crowds don't always separate certain things, he probably was the receiving end of a lot of mocking as well, because now Simon is part of the spectacle. Crowds later, just a few around the block probably didn't know what happened right there, and so they might also mock Simon, who's just an innocent bystander in this. But now he's part of the spectacle. But probably the most inconvenient thing that we may not think about this from Simon's perspective, this made Simon unclean. That may seem like small potatoes, because if you're unclean, just go wash your hands, man, it's fine. After you've done carrying the cross, just go do one of those baptismals that they have all around Jerusalem and go get washed, and you'll be fine. Well, according to Jewish law, if you were unclean no matter what you did until evening. Here's the deal. We know that this is happening on the day of preparation for the Passover. So Simon, on the day before preparation of the Passover, will be unclean, and they will be unclean until the end of the day. In other words, Simon will not be able to participate in the Passover feast. The moment that he picks up Jesus' cross, he realizes his journey to come and celebrate Passover is taken away because he is unclean, and he won't be able to go and worship as he planned because he had touched the blood of another person. The very purpose for which Simon came to Jerusalem is taken away. And I tell you what, a lot of my things that I get impatient for seem really piddly compared to that. How about you? A lot of things that I get impatient for is just because I don't want to be late, or not even that, I just want to hurry. I want to get through this as fast as I can to go to the next thing. Very few times have the plans that I have worked on maybe for years, maybe my whole life, and has taken me maybe 2 months to journey and to get to this point and then be taken away. That's more than an inconvenience. But here's Simon. All of his plans seemingly have come to nothing. But God had some different plans for Simon. You see, this isn't the end of the story, or at least it isn't the whole story. We know that. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all mention about Simon. And I wish we had more to the story, but the thing is, we actually might. Consider back to what Mark said. There's a detail in here. It says, a certain man from Cyrene, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus. Now, why would Mark decide to tell us who his kids are? What would be the point of that unless the readers of this letter knew Alexander and Rufus? Actually, there's some merit in that. Because, fast forward to Romans. In the book of Romans, whenever Paul is finishing up kind of his introduction to the Roman church there, because he's wanting to come through, in chapter 16, he spends basically the whole chapter saying, greet this person and this person and this person. Basically, he's name-dropping everywhere that he can, because Paul might be an insecure person. I don't know exactly. But what he's doing is greet all these people. And check out what happens in Romans 16, verse 13. He says, greet Rufus, chosen in the Lord, and his mother, who has been a mother to me too. Now, we all know that there can be more than one person that has the same name. Right, John? Yeah, okay. We all know that. And Rufus, I don't know, it's not a popular name now, but maybe it was a popular name then. And so we just have to guess. But how this is written, most scholars believe, it's the consensus really among most scholars, is that this is the same Rufus, Simon's son, 25 years later, whenever Paul was writing in Romans. The same guy. I don't know if that's absolutely true, but I just want to take some faith and say, yeah. Even if it's not, it's still powerful. See, the journey, if this is true, the journey, which started for Simon as a massive inconvenience, and maybe even an embarrassment of plans not working out. I mean, can you imagine him going back to his family? How was the festival? And how was Passover there in Jerusalem? And he has to say, I didn't make it. I mean, that's embarrassment, right? That moment, though, begins a journey of grace and transformation. So picture again, Simon being forced to carry Jesus' cross. But now, instead of being part of this crowd, and not even being Simon, you're Alexander or Rufus. You watch your dad pick up some other guy's cross who is following this guy to his death. We don't know how old they are. But believe you me, they're taking it all in. They're watching. They're listening to what the crowd says. They're hearing the charges about this man. And then at the cross, they're hearing the things that this man, Jesus, says. The Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And these other things that Jesus says. And at some point along their journey, whether it's that day or sometime later, they understand that this man died in their place. That cross should have been theirs because they have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And so in that moment, whenever that moment comes, they realize and they become followers of Jesus. So much so that Rufus' mother adopts Paul, a missionary who in his own right bore the cross of Jesus in many ways and literally. What started as an inconvenient intrusion in their lives became a defining moment for their whole lives. This was clearly part of God's plan, something that Jesus even foreshadowed, and a lot of people didn't realize it. Mark 16:24, then Jesus said to his disciples, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross, and follow me. We often talk about this as the path of discipleship, that a disciple takes up their cross, and follows Jesus. Simon is literally the first person to pick up a cross and follow Jesus. And yet he shows us how it's done. He teaches the next generation how to do it as well. And I'm sure Rufus and Alexander teach the next generation how to do it. You see, the thing is, taking up the cross of Christ is never convenient. I wish it were something that we could schedule. I'm a guy that likes calendars and I like plans. I have my to-do list and I have certain things to do on certain days, and I like that kind of structure. It allows me flexibility in other areas, so I like having the structure in certain things. And I would love to be able to say, all right, Lord, can we plan out whenever I'm going to pick up your cross? Did you realize that's about as silly as what I sometimes tell I sometimes tell people I'm close to with this whenever we start talking about funeral plans. Whenever someone says, hey, I would love for you to do my funeral. I'm like, great, I'm free next Tuesday. You know, like I joke around about that because I know how ludicrous it is. We don't plan these things. It's the same idea. Please do not take offense to that joke, because man, I realize someone's going to, and I apologize on that. The thing is, it is never convenient to pick up the cross of Christ. It never fits within your plans that you have for that day. It can be emotionally draining. I mean, you can have some emotional damage from that. And it may mess up all of your plans for the future. But when you take up the cross of Christ, it messes up your plans for the better. It may not be convenient, but it is always convicting. When you pick up your cross and you follow the beaten, slaughtered lamb that Revelation will point Jesus to, and you follow him all the way through, you realize that victory is already his. And it may be an unpleasant sight in the moment, but on the other side of glory, it is amazing. And it's something that you wouldn't want to ever miss. And you wouldn't want all the little inconveniences to slip away if it meant that you would miss that day. So may we be a people that have a little bit more patience. May we be a people who have a little bit more grace. But may we be a people especially that whenever asked, when Jesus says, "Will you take this cross, my cross, upon you?" we don't look at him and say, "Can we do it later? Can we schedule a time whenever it's a little bit more convenient?" May those words or those thoughts never creep into our head or come out of our mouths. May we simply say, "Yes, Lord, how far are we going?" And follow him the whole way. May that define us now and every day of our lives. And if you need to take up the cross of Christ this morning, I'm not going to lie, it's a burden. It is inconvenient, but it is blessed. And that inconvenience will change your life. And if you need to take up his cross this morning, then we welcome you. We welcome you on the journey of following Jesus every day of your life. If you need anything, or if you need prayers or more understanding of this walk, then we encourage you to find one of the elders, one of the ministers surrounding this auditorium as we stand and sing together.